Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. As you guys can see up on the screen here today, we are going to be going over my LEC jungler tier list. This is my updated tier list now that we have gotten to see the entire regular season of the spring split over in the LEC. So now I'm going to be giving my updated thoughts and opinions on all of these players, kind of looking back and reflecting on the season that they just had, but also looking forward to the future, who I think still belongs in the LEC, who I think is going to rebound into the next split, who's going to do well, continue to do well into the playoffs and everything. So it's a little bit about the past, but also a little bit forward looking as well. What you're looking at on the screen right now is actually my preseason tier list after free agency and the offseason and everything was over. I gave my initial thoughts and opinions on everybody, and this is actually messed up a little bit. I actually had these guys switched around. I believe this was my A tier was Inspired and Gilius. So now again, we're going to be giving my updated thoughts and opinions. We did top lane yesterday. We're doing jungle today. We're going to do the rest of the positions over the course of the week. But yeah, I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions, hopefully get your guys' as well. Before we get into that, I just want to mention real quick, if you guys have not already, please take a second, smash that subscribe button. I would appreciate it so much. It really helps me out, running those numbers up, making me and my content look better, do better, perform better, all that stuff. It would be absolutely awesome. I know we're closing in on 6,500 subscribers, so hey, help us out. That'd be awesome. Also, drop a like on the video if you do enjoy it. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, and that just one more easy way to help support the channel and my content if that's something you're interested in doing. With that being said, let's get right into this. Starting at the bottom, we have Razk, who I had him ranked as F tier coming into the season. I don't know why I was such a Razk hater. I wasn't really too impressed with him coming into the season. I didn't really have that high of expectations, but now that we've gotten to see the regular season overall for Misfits, I think Misfits was a team that surprised a lot of people in a lot of ways. I think people thought they were going to be solid, maybe some people. It depends kind of what you thought about Kabe and Vander. And this team had a really up and down year. And Razk had times where he looked good. He had times where he looked not so good. But overall, I think he was pretty consistent. Overall, I think he was pretty dang solid. And I think he had a very good season. And to me, F tier means probably don't belong in the LEC, probably, maybe they need more time in European regional leagues or to play for academy or whatever, or maybe they need to be replaced, and Razk does not fit that definition at all. I don't even think he's been C tier. Honestly, in my opinion, I think Razk has been really solid. To me, he's a guy I'm more excited about headed into the summer split. I think he can continue to develop and just get better and better, and I really hope he keeps up a lot of the things that he was doing in the spring split. 1 second. Oh man, sorry about that. But yeah, Razk was a guy that I was definitely impressed with. He was a guy I was definitely wrong about, and I'm going to be moving him up into the B tier for what he was able to do this season. Next up, we have Dan, and he was another guy I was not super excited for coming into the season. I didn't think he would be the worst jungler, but I had him at 9th, so obviously I didn't think he would be very good. The Excel team as a whole is a team that I wasn't super excited about. I'm definitely a fan of Patrick. I was definitely hyped up for Jankos coming into the season, but I wasn't sold on Dan. I wasn't sold on Torre. I didn't think this team was going to be necessarily great, and I know I say this in all of these, but League of Legends is a team game, and if you don't play on the best team in the world, it can make you look worse. It can have a negative impact on your play, on your stats, how you're perceived by the community, by fans, by analysts. It can affect your confidence. It can affect everything. And jungle is obviously a very team reliant position. If you're jungling with losing lanes, if you're jungling from behind, it can be hard to have an impact. It can be hard to affect games. So it can be tough. But with all that being said, obviously Excel was not necessarily the best team in the LEC. They weren't terrible. They had weeks where they looked very good, and they at times looked like they might be a playoff team. But they did end up finishing in 8th place. They had one of the worst records in the LEC, obviously towards the bottom of the standings. And for the most part, I think Dan was not very consistent. I don't think he was a strong force in like trying to help Excel get better or win more games or whatever. So I didn't have high expectations coming into the season for him, but I knew he was an inexperienced guy who maybe with a little bit of experience could develop, and I still think that it's still possible. But to me, over the course of the season and going forward, I am seeing Dan as kind of an F tier jungler. If Excel decided to replace him, I don't think that would be a horrible decision. If they want to give him some more time and think he can develop, that's fine. But they've seen one whole split of him. Not that one whole split is all that much, 18 games or whatever. But I wasn't super impressed with him. I think he is definitely replaceable. And he was kind of just an F tier jungler to me. But if you had him C tier, I could see that as well. Either way. Next up, we have Tinks, and this is a guy that obviously coming out of the European Regional Leagues, I wasn't sure exactly how to rate him, exactly how good he was going to be, and really the whole SK team. I was excited for them, but it was a lot of inexperienced guys, a lot of guys that I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to happen or how it was going to go, but yeah, this young, inexperienced team fought their way into a playoff spot, and a lot of their players overall throughout the course of the season impressed me, and they had some good weeks and they had some bad weeks. They definitely struggled against some of the better competition in the LEC, but they did a good job handling the people below them. They ended up being a middle-of-the-pack team with a lot of, kind of middle-of-the-pack players who never really push up into the upper tiers of the LEC necessarily in any different positions, but definitely fought off the guys below them as well, and I think Tinks was a big part of that. I think overall he was a solid jungler. I don't have too many huge complaints about him. I don't think, he was like an insane, massive carry. I'm not saying, oh, he's going to replace Jankos or he should be replacing Selfmade on Fnatic or anything like that, but I think he did what SK needed him to do. I think he was very solid. I think overall he had a very nice split, and I think this guy has a bright future ahead of him. To me, he was a B tier jungler, another guy that I'm kind of moving up from these lower ranks up into the B tier, and a little bit of foreshadowing. If I'm moving some of these guys up from lower, some of these guys above them are going to be coming down a little bit. So that's what we got to start talking about now. We have Zanzara to talk about. Obviously, him playing for Astralis, it was going to be tough. Again, jungling, very team-reliant position. We had very low expectations for Astralis coming into the season. We knew they were going to be very good. We knew they were probably going to be one of the worst teams in the LEC, and they honestly, in a lot of ways, surprised people. I think they ended up winning more games than a lot of people would have predicted. They didn't finish last, so they have that going for them. But still, playing a jungle for a team that's going to lose that many games, it's going to be tough. You're going to have games and times where you don't look great, even if you are playing okay, even if you're playing all right. I think overall Zanzara had an okay split. I don't think he was necessarily a standout in any way. I know, all the memes of like him being the tax man and playing a bunch of Skarner and being on tank duty and playing, that team supportive role and doing what he needed to do in that regards was good. And he had a lot of that, and he could show, some worth in that regards. But, he kind of just fell into that boat of being a little bit one-dimensional and not really being able to show different looks and not even being that successful overall. So I was okay, decently hyped up for him. I had him as like a low B tier coming into the season. I wasn't super disappointed or super surprised by his level of play, but looking and comparing him to the other junglers in the LEC and how this season went and how everybody performed, I definitely do want to bump him down a little bit. I am going to be moving him down to the C tier. I think, he's one of the bottom junglers in the LEC. I don't think he's like middle of the pack. I think he's probably a little bit below. I don't think he's like not LEC caliber. I still keep him in the C tier, not the F. But overall, I wasn't super impressed. I don't think it was a super standout performance. I'm not really thinking back to a ton of like huge crazy moments from Zanzara or anything like that when I think back to the season or any of Astralis' games or whatever. They were a team that maybe surprised us, but they were still not a very good team. They still didn't have a lot of great performances, and Zanzara was certainly part of that. Next up, we have Aloya. I had him in the B tier coming in. I know this was a very hyped player for Mad Lions. Obviously, he was going to be replacing Shadow, which was going to be tough. Shadow was very good during his time on Mad Lions, and while people were hyped up and excited for Aloya, I just kind of wanted to temper my expectations because I knew Shadow was big shoes to fill, and it was going to be tough, and it was going to be difficult, especially for a more inexperienced guy in the LEC, and this was going to be a difficult thing because Mad Lions was going to have high expectations, especially after flaming out at Worlds last year. They wanted to come in this year and prove to people that they can be better, that they are better than that. So I had Aloy as a B tier coming in. I knew he was a solid jungler. I knew he was good. People have been hyping him up. People have been talking good about him. We've seen him do good. He's had a very good history. But honestly, I was really impressed with him over the course of the season. I thought he really defied my expectations. He was way better than I thought he was going to be. He was way better than I think a lot of people thought he was going to be. And he helped Mad Lions, even though they did not look great. Mad Lions was super inconsistent team this split. They were up and down. They probably weren't as good as they want to be. And definitely probably didn't even perform as well as his team should have. This is a very talented team, with guys like Humanoid and Kaiser and everybody. And, they're still kind of showing the same inconsistencies and issues and stuff. But they fought through all that and were still able to get the 3 seed in the LEC. Now, yes, they're very close to the 4th and the 5th and the 6th team. There's not a huge amount of discrepancy or anything there. But still, they were able to get that 3rd seed. Aloya was a big part of that, helping improve his team, and fighting through a lot of the adversity and struggles. And, even though Mad Lions wasn't the most dominant team or the best team or whatever, I think Aloya was still able to kind of shine above that and look pretty good throughout a lot of that. So, coming in the season, I had him as a B tier, but now I definitely see Aloya as an A tier jungler. I was really, really impressed with him this split, and I think he was really, really solid. He's a guy that I'm very, very excited for going forward. Has he entirely replaced Shadow? Are they better off with Aloya than Shadow? I'm not saying that by any means. They're just very, very different players, and who knows what the future holds for Aloya, whether he'll continue to develop, whether this was as good as it gets, who knows. But I've definitely been impressed with this guy, and I think he is an upper tier jungler in the LEC. I think he is very, very solid. You could definitely do worse than having Aloya as your jungler. Next up, we're getting into Skeens. Man, Vitality. Coming into the year, I was very, very skeptical. I had Vitality ranked as like the 6th or 7th best team in the LEC. I tell the story all the time. And I actually got a lot of hate for that. People were saying I was sleeping on Vitality. What am I talking about? Comp and LeBron are going to do this. Melita's going to do that. Skeens is going to do that. And I was just saying, I don't really see it. I don't even know if they'll be a playoff team. Maybe they'll be the last team in the playoffs, but they're not going to make it very far. I mean, that was what I thought. I had never really been too impressed with a lot of the players on this team. But, I still had them ranked as like the 6th or 7th best team, so I had a lot of guys ranked in like the B tier, a lot of guys in the middle of their positions, and Skeens fell into that category for me. I thought he was going to be just decent again. I wasn't expecting him to be good, like a top 5 jungler, upper tier or anything, but I didn't think he was going to be terrible. I didn't think he was going to be bad. But man, obviously this season went real south real fast for a lot of these guys in Vitality. They looked a lot worse than a lot of people expected. They looked very inconsistent, and maybe not even inconsistent because they looked pretty consistently bad. Like, I mean, things were not good from really the start of the season to the end for Vitality. Maybe towards the end, they started to ramp up and get a little bit better, but this team looked rough, and a big part of it was Skeens. I mean, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of other people, he was maybe the worst jungler in the LEC, maybe the second worst. I mean, there's definitely a conversation to be had about Skeens potentially being the worst jungler on the LEC, and being a big part of the disappointing season that was for Vitality. And it was so just hard to watch and hard to see. I know a lot of people are calling for him to be replaced. I know the latest rumor is that it seems like Skeens might be gone, and that they maybe will be going with a European Regional League jungler, or maybe they'll try and make a big splash. I mean, it's always harder to find a replacement in between spring and summer split and everything, but I mean, we'll see what happens there, but just based off this past split and what we saw and what's going on, I mean, I definitely think Skeens played a big part of why Vitality was so bad, why they were so inconsistent, and it was really tough to watch. So I had him as a B tier. I was definitely wrong about that. I mean, a lot of these junglers I was not right about going into the season. I'm definitely moving him down to the F tier. Maybe he's the worst, maybe Dan's the worst, maybe he thinks Zanzara's the worst. I think there's a case to be made for a couple of these guys. You can have these guys in a lot of different orders, but this is kind of what I'm thinking, that Skeens is the F tier for me. It sounds like he might be getting replaced. It sounds like the team might not think he's LEC level, so I think he belongs in that F tier for now. Next up, we're getting into Inspired. This is a guy who I had in the A tier coming in. I thought very, very highly of him. I was hyped up for him. I was excited for him. A lot of people were excited for this Rogue team, but we weren't exactly sure how good they were going to be. We knew Rogue was going to be good, but were they going to be the best team in the LEC, the second best? Was Fnatic going to be there? Was Mad Lions going to be there? Who knows? Just how good is Odawamne going to fit in on this team? Is that going to make Inspired and some of these other guys better? Are they going to do worse? Did Finn fit in with them good? Are they going to miss Vander? There's a lot of questions about Rogue. So I had high expectations for Inspired. I had high expectations for Rogue, but I was still kind of keeping everything in check. I wanted to see these guys do it. And man, this season they absolutely did it, and Inspired played a huge part of that. I know there's been some talk of him potentially being the LEC MVP. He's been a huge part of everything that Rogue's done. I think, obviously, I thought highly of him coming into the season, but he has defied my expectations. He's defied a lot of people's expectations. I think Odawamne has been a big part of why Rogue overall has looked better. I think just also these guys have had a good offseason where they have really improved. And the one knock I have on Rogue is that still they haven't really had a competitive game or series with G2. They're never able to get over whether it's the mental hurdle or whether it's just a big skill difference and skill gap between the two teams or whatever. But Rogue, dominates the other LEC teams, and Inspired looks great against everybody else. But the team just can't find a way to show up against G2, and that's really disheartening. And it's sad because this team is so good and they're so talented, but to compete for LEC titles, to go to Worlds, to do any damage, they're going to have to beat good teams. They're going to have to get over that hump, get over that hurdle. And I don't know exactly what the answer is or exactly how they're going to do it. But I know that either way, Rogue was a ton of fun to watch this LEC split. I know Inspired was a ton of fun to watch. He was one of the best players in the league. Definitely one of the best junglers in the league. I had him as an A tier coming into the season, and he is without a doubt an S tier jungler for me now. Next up, we got Mr. Gilius. This guy, I had him rated as an A tier coming into the season. He was really, really good for Schalke last year, especially during the Schalke Miracle run. Obviously, everybody knows the memes and everything. He was good. He played a huge part in that. He's a guy who is hyper competitive, always trash talking, always tweeting, and really always making big plays. So coming into the season, I thought he was going to be one of the better junglers. I wasn't exactly sure just how good Schalke was going to be or how it was going to work out or how all these offseason changes were going to affect everyone, but I thought Gilius was going to be good. I thought Schalke might still have some inconsistency issues and stuff, and maybe they weren't going to be as good as they were during the Miracle run, but I didn't think they were going to be as bad as they were previously either. So I thought, Gilius was going to be in a good position with a pretty solid mid laner, a pretty solid top laner to overall be a good jungler, and that Schalke could overall be a pretty good team. And in some ways, I was right. I think Schalke has been a good team. They finished with the 4th best record in the LEC. They have wins against Rogue, wins against G2. They've knocked off some of the better teams. But unfortunately for Mr. Gilius, this was, in my opinion, a very, very rough split for him where Schalke did a lot of their winning kind of despite Gilius's play and kind of in spite of him overall not having a very good split as a jungler, and it was really, really disappointing to see. And coming into the season, I had him as like a top 4 jungler, and he has really not played like it this split, and I don't know exactly where to move him, if he belongs in the C tier, just based off this split, probably, but based on his past and his history and knowing that Schalke as a whole is inconsistent and bounces around and stuff, does he maybe deserve to go in low B tier? Like, yeah, maybe. Like, if he bounced back in the summer split, or even if he bounces back in playoffs, I wouldn't be totally shocked. I know he's still a talented guy, but man, he had a really, really rough split in the LEC. He had rough early games. He has like low gold per minute, low damage per minute, not really making plays, not really doing a whole lot. And yeah, I just think it was a really, really rough split for Gilius, where we did not see the play that we saw from him last year during the summer split into the summer playoffs. And it was disappointing, and it really was. I was hyped up for him coming into the season, and he, honestly, on this list is one of the biggest disappointments for me, because, we've seen him be better in this. We know he can be better in this, but the whole team, still has a lot of those same inconsistency issues. And yeah, this was definitely one of the downs in that for Gilius' split, and it's tough for me to rank him. I think low B tier is appropriate. I think high C tier would be fine too. Wouldn't argue with you too much either way, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about him there. Next up, we get into Selfmade, and Selfmade is another guy that's really, really hard for me to rate. Coming into the season, I had him as the 2nd best jungler in the LEC. I had him in the S tier. And there was a lot of discussion and debate, honestly, coming into the season, that who was better between Jankos and Selfmade. Selfmade was coming off a great year with Fnatic, where he was an awesome carry during the right meta. When Fnatic was playing the right playstyle, he could pop off, and he could carry games against the best teams in the world. He could give G2 trouble. He could give top esports trouble at Worlds. He could give all these teams problems, because he was a huge carry. He was a huge threat, and he was one of the biggest carry threats on Fnatic, and Fnatic played through him in a lot of ways. And then coming into this season with Niski being the new mid laner, and knowing that Niski likes to play that team-oriented mid lane style, knowing that he would probably be able to make his jungler look really, really good, that Niski's played with another crazy aggressive jungler in Blabber, and that went really, really well, and Selfmade and Niski could be the new Niski and Blabber. But unfortunately, overall for Fnatic, that has not necessarily happened this season. Fnatic has been really inconsistent. Overall, they've been just really bad. They haven't been as good as Fnatic expects to be, or was previously, or as good as a lot of the fans and stuff want them to be. And honestly, it's not all Selfmade's fault. I'm not going to say that it's like Selfmade's the reason that Fnatic has sucked this year, but he has certainly not been as good as he was last year. And could that be because overall Fnatic has been a little bit worse? Yeah, but I also think that, Selfmade's play has slipped a little bit. He has not been as huge of a carry threat. He hasn't been as consistent. He hasn't been generating as big of leads and stuff like that. He hasn't been as big of a threat. He has not been able to carry as many games for Fnatic. He has not been able to, you know, be that monster in the jungle that really brings fear into other teams and can win games and can take those tough games that Fnatic has no business winning or he has no business carrying and just absolutely pop off like maybe he did at times last year. And again, last year was a whole different Fnatic team. It was a whole different meta. Obviously, the game changes year over year, your team, roster, everything. There's so many variables that go into it, and overall the whole Fnatic as a team looks worse than they did last year. A lot of the players look worse. Is there something bigger at play? You know, who knows exactly, but the conversations are not there right now between who's better between Jankos and Selfmade. I think without a doubt, people understand that Selfmade did not have anywhere near as good of a split. But with that being said, obviously, I think he is still a very, very talented player. I think him and Fnatic are going to find a way to rebound. I think he obviously still has a very, very bright future ahead of him. But from what we saw this past split, I cannot keep him in the S tier. I'm going to be bumping him down to the A tier. Maybe his play even deserved lower than that. But with his history, with his past, and with his talent, again, I would not be surprised at all if he bounces back in the playoffs. I still think he's great. I still think Fnatic overall is a very, very talented team, and they just need to get some things sorted out, and I think they can all come back. But I do have to take him out of the S tier, but I still think he's there as an A tier, as a very, very talented jungler who maybe just, you know, had a bad split, had an off split, and I think that's really all it was. Finally, we get to Mr. Jankos. I had him as the S tier best jungler coming into the season. Obviously, this guy's been there, done that, done everything. LEC championships, MSI, World. He's just consistent. He fits into really every playstyle. He does exactly what G2 needs in a lot of ways. He's been very, very good, and he's been good historically. I had a very, very high praise for him coming into the season. I thought he was going to be one of the best junglers, probably the best jungler, and I think he has proved that once again for G2. Obviously, there's a ton of memes about him, and his Nidalee, and his this and his that, but he can really play all the different styles of jungle. Maybe he's not the best at every single style, but overall, he has a massive champion pool. He fits into G2's playstyle really, really well. There's not too much you can nitpick about any of these G2 players. I think Jankos was very, very good this season, and is a big part of why G2 secured the 1 seed in the LEC. It's a big part of why they're the favorites going into the playoffs, and I think he was the best jungler in the LEC this split. I expect him to be the best going forward. There's a case to be made of whether Inspired was a better jungler than him this season or had a better season or whatever, but to me, it's still Jankos, and to me, going forward, it's still Jankos. Inspired would need to, you know, beat G2 in a series or win an LEC title or do something like that to kind of, you know, overtake him, overpass him or whatever. So I'm definitely keeping him at the top of my list. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is my LEC updated tier list after the regular season, before the playoffs, my thoughts and opinions on all 10 junglers in the LEC that we've seen this season. Definitely drop a like on this video if you did enjoy it. I would appreciate it a ton. Really, really helps me out the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about my list. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What does your tier list look like? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on anything we talked about in today's video. Subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest content. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace!